James Olley, of course, was on with us yesterday, brilliantly broke down everything that went wrong during Antonio Conte's tenure at Spurs. In case you missed it, a long-form essay that he's written for the website. Be sure to check that out. Don is with us. Don, did you read that?
I did.
What struck you most out? Because it's a lot of different revelations in there.
Yeah, I think the thing that struck me the most, Dan, because we were all scratching our heads months ago, realising or wondering why are Tottenham going 1-0 behind? Why are Tottenham going 2-0 behind on 9 out of 12 games? How come they go 2-0 behind? And then I read that report today, or I read that article. Then I delved into a few more this afternoon, and I read a different article that apparently Antonio Conte had the Spurs players training on a Saturday morning with a 3 o'clock Saturday game, and doing quite a heavy shift on a Saturday morning. I'm thinking, well, no wonder they were 1-0 down and 2-0 down, because they were leggy going into games. So there was a bit of it that was true, you know, where you're looking at the players, you think, are these players, you know, really going through the motions? Do they really want to dig deep? When Antonio Conte said they want to play when it's easy and when it's free, well, that's most players, but they're not willing to dig in deep. But I thought the article was fascinating.
It's not uncommon to train the morning of the game. Well, to do an activation.
Right.
A little jog and a stretch, get a little sweat going. That's not uncommon. What's uncommon is that if you're doing a full session ahead of a game that starts at 3 o'clock. Now, what Antonio Conte, and I'm guessing the people that work with him, would suggest is, well, how come we're fit enough to come back in games? Because if being tired was an issue, then it shouldn't affect, or it certainly shouldn't have that impact, or it shouldn't allow us to be able to come back late in matches, which, to be fair to the Spurs, they've done that quite often. So I don't know that this is a question of fitness, to be honest with you. I think there is more to this than whether they did a training session or not, or an activation or not, or was it too much, whether they're leggy or not. I think this is far more complex than that. That would be too simplistic.
What was interesting, given the conversations we've had over the years, you boys tell me that footballers like routine.
Correct.
Thing to be the same.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, within that article, James Olley talks about how Conte suddenly changed training,
everything.
different schedule. Next day, you're training at a different time. But from someone who has played, from someone who's had so much success, why did he feel this was necessary, and why did he think it might work?
I've no idea. I've always wondered this. There's not just him, but there's other managers. You know, they talk about the training before a game. There's not one player I've ever spoken to who thinks it's nothing other than a pain.
Right.
No, I've never spoken to one player who said anything but horrible things to say about it. And I bet you as a player, if Conte was told to go and train in the morning, he'd probably be moaning about it. I don't get coaches who, when they become coaches after being a player, forget all the things that irritate players. And not having things settled, particularly during the season. You know, that's why we talk about, you know, give the manager pre-season to get everything all settled, get the formation done, get everything down, get everybody get the fitness done and get everything so that when you go in the season, you're sailing through the weeks. Everybody's got a good idea of, you know, because
it's routine, yeah.
Because it's routine. I could tell you still what training would be for Liverpool during the week. It would be an easy Monday. Tuesday you'd have a bit of fun. Then it would start getting serious if you were in on Wednesday. Generally you'd be off. And then Thursday, Friday, you're at it.
Right.
And everybody knows it. And you know generally when you're going to be off. You know how long training lasts. You know when you're going to be home. Everything just falls into place. So the minute you start throwing spanners in, week after week, sometimes we train Wednesday afternoon. Next week we train Tuesday afternoon. The following week it's Thursday afternoon.
Right.
The week after, it's an absolute nightmare. Players absolutely hate it. And again, I'll go back to it. Players that become coaches who forget the way players think, they just harm themselves. And clearly, Conte's been harming himself because he's just getting the players against him.
But Shaq, we talked about this obviously when Keegan was on the run and things started to go wrong. He started to change training and things like that. Was this just Conte grasping at straws at the end, just trying to get something?
I could only assume so. And because we are talking about a manager, serial winner, who's won things in English football.
Yeah.
Who understands the culture and the mentality of those routines and how to get the best out of players in English football. So how do you do that with Chelsea and then get it this wrong with Spurs? And that's where I'm struggling. It's not as though it's a manager who's coming in and discovering English football for the first time and discovering how players like their routines and what may have worked in Italy doesn't necessarily work in England. He knows it. He's lived this, he's experienced it, he's won in England. So to get it this wrong, I find that amazing. And what is the catalyst for that? I'm sorry, I can't answer.
And when players start seeing those changes, then they start asking questions of the manager. Does this guy know what he's doing? Because you just mentioned grasping at straws, right? So there's a sense of desperation. When all these changes are happening, then you, as a player, you're beginning to question, does he really have a plan? Or are we just throwing stuff at the wall and see what sticks? And if this week this works, then we're going to stick with this for as long as we continue to get results. But then once it goes south, then we'll change it again. That consistency allows players to trust the process, to trust the plan, to trust what is it that you're trying to sell to the players. And managers at times have to be salesmen. This is what I want you to do, because if you do this, we're going to be able to achieve this. Right. And when that message is clear and is consistent, it's a whole lot easier for players to be able to process that information and to trust what you're saying. When you start moving the goal here, there, and everywhere, players lose trust. And when players lose trust, they don't believe in what you're saying.
You know the first thing you've got to do when you get a group of players together? You've got to get them to a place where they want to come in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that they're driving in the morning going, I wonder what's going to...
Yeah.
I can't wait.
So you're not already starting against the grain.
Well, you're driving in going, oh, here we go, what's going to happen today?
Just one more thing from the article, I just want to get your perspective from a coach's point of view, is that when a player knocked on his door and said, what's going on, why aren't I playing? And he was like, look, when I asked you to come on in a game, it took you 90 seconds to get ready. Look at Perisic here, it took him 7 seconds. Do those things play a part in a manager's psyche when they're thinking about who to introduce?
Yeah, he's a player, so he wants to know why he's not on the field playing on the field.
Yeah.
Right? And if you tell him he's not on the field because he takes 10 seconds too long to get his socks on, you've lost him already.
Right.
Because what does that have to do with him playing football?
Okay.
Nothing. So if he's telling you some cockamamie story why you're not playing, well, you kind of figure out, I'm never going to play.
Right. If he comes on and scores a hat-trick after taking 2 minutes, it doesn't make it...
Listen, if I tell you, you're not playing because see the guy in your spot?
Yeah.
He scored 46 goals.
Right.
But if I turn around and say you're not playing because it takes you too long to get your shin pads on, it's ridiculous, right?
Imagine doing the video breakdown to notice that you took longer than the other guy to come in.
Right.
Now, that's a miserable existence right there.
Where does that come from? Yeah.
It's also never a good idea, parenting 101, to say, why can't you be more like a big brother? That never goes down well anywhere.
Yeah. Don, I just want a simple answer, not a long waffly answer. If we take a look at the odds as to who's going to be the next Spurs manager, who would you choose?
I think it would be De Zerbi. That's who I would choose.
You can give me a little more.
Well, okay. I think the brand of football that he plays. I think he's improved Brighton. I think he's a very good coach. I like his style. He plays attacking football. His mantra when he was in Italy, he'd rather lose the game 4-3 than win 1-0 ugly. So at least Spurs are going to get that entertainment. Brighton have certainly got it this season.
So I was just going to Google Ardy Slot. Anyone?
Who?
No, exactly. It's like a joke that someone's just put into the odds. I'm not even sure if he's a real person.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN+.